What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Ani-mity, and welcome back to what you could either consider the earliest or latest I've ever recorded one of these videos. Just really want to be able to get something here together because I've been busting to be able to record this video ever since Anime Expo. It's been a week since that awesome event. I'd still love to be able to share how that experience went down in a video sometime in the future. If you guys want to hear me gab about that, then please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to be able to talk about it. But when I went to Anime Expo, I had the honor of meeting with Brenton Rogers, and I got to just thank him for all the lovely memories that I have with Helluva Boss and all the things that everything that Helluva Boss has given me as far as the feels, the connection with my friends, and so much more, which was super fun. So glad that I got to meet with him, and so glad I got to go to Anime Expo in general. And because of that, I wanted to push forward with doing this idea that a friend of mine gave me some time ago, which is to go through a couple characters from Helluva Boss and kind of rank them based on how much they mean to me, how much I think they mean for the story, and just give my general thoughts on some of the characters that we know and love from the Helluva Boss series. And I'm starting with Helluva Boss, not with Hazbin Hotel, just because of the fact that I met with Brandon Rogers, and he's really cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm going to be making sense given that I'm recording this so late. My brain is practically fried at this point, but let's see how things end up going, and hopefully I make some kind of coherent sense while I'm recording this. I have some notes that I prepared for doing this video, and hopefully I'll be able to make sense of them while I'm recording this. For this, I did a few things for pulling which characters I was going to include and which ones I wasn't going to include in this ranking list. Specifically, what I did is I went to the Hazbin Hotel Wikipedia, and I went through not only the list of characters based on what they had for for the Hell of a Boss, but also going off of the episodes. I kind of looked through a list of all the episodes and was kind of like, okay, what do I remember of the plot for each of these episodes? And then based on that, what do I remember from each of the characters that participated in the episodes? And then from there, I started kind of whittling it down to how well I remember the characters themselves, how well I remember what their impact was for the story and that kind of thing, and then how often they appeared in the show. Like some characters who appeared like maybe once, or maybe appeared a couple of times as like a throwaway kind of gag or something like that. Those characters I didn't end up including on here, but there were some characters of that nature that I ended up really liking, but just chose not to include on this list. So I have a few honorable mentions that I wanted to include here, who won't be making it onto my ranking list, and just kind of just set the explain why certain characters. So if you're wondering like why X doesn't end up on this list, here's kind of like my reasoning as to why, and then also kind of giving a few just honorable mentions to some characters. So the characters that will not be appearing on this list are Loopty-Gloopty, Lyle Lipton, Vortex, Crimson, just because as much as I do think that he's an interesting character, as much as I think that he's interesting for what he adds to Moxie, he just doesn't feel like he really stands well enough on his own. He kind of just feels like a background filler character, so I didn't end up including him on the list. Barbed Wire, which I know a lot of people are going to hate me for, Visago, and Emberlyn. Hopefully I pronounced that name right. I don't know. If I didn't mention any characters that if I don't mention any character that you think I'm missing by name, it's most likely either because I didn't remember them, or because of the fact that I just don't think that they really added enough to the story, or they didn't really have enough of a presence or a role that I felt like they were worth kind of adding to this list. There's some characters that I was looking through the list and I'm kind of like, who's this character? Like, there's a one character, I think Eddie was the name. And I looked at that and I'm like, who the heck is Eddie? And then I clicked on it and it was like, oh, he's the kid from the pilot episode. I don't remember that. It's been such a long time since I've seen the pilot. I wouldn't remember that whatsoever. So certain characters like that aren't going to be on this list. I just didn't even give them the thought of where I wanted to go about ranking them. I also chose not to include the angels or the agents for this list as much as I like episodes like Truth Seekers, or like some of the episodes like Full Moon, where the angels and the agents are included, and kind of get to see the human world and some of the other world outside of the perspective of hell. Honestly, I just found them really annoying. I didn't really like them as characters all that much, so I just decided they can go into the F to like non-existent ranks of characters I just chose not to talk about or not to mention for this list. So if you guys are wondering where those guys are, I didn't forget about them. I just chose not to do them because I don't like them. And that's pretty much it. So with that being said, let's get to our official rankings for Helluva Boss. So, starting off, we're going to talk about Blitz, who I chose to put in C. Now, overall, I do think that Blitz is a very interesting character. I think he's a very good anchor for the show. Unbiased, I think that he'd be like an A tier character. I think that he does everything that he needs to as the main character of the story. He drives the story really, really well. He kind of is a very good character for like getting us to know the nature of hell and kind of the nature of the classism that exists in the world, and kind of like giving us something that we as an audience kind of can latch onto, especially because he just has such an interesting past and has such interesting lore to him, especially with Stolas, who we'll get to obviously later in the episode. But I think unbiased, he deserves an A rank. But personally, for me, I bump him down to C just because of that. I just do find him kind of annoying as a character. He's an asshole. He just is by virtue kind of the character that is meant to annoy you. And he think he does that. He does that very well. And I kind of just for me, I don't like him. I do like a lot of what he provides for the show, but just as an overall character, I'm gonna love what we get to see about him and get to learn more about Blitz as the show goes on, but just overall, his overall personality and character just doesn't work for me, so I'm bumping him down to C. Sorry, Brandon Rogers. Loved you, loved getting the chance to meet you, but Blitz gets a C tier. Moving on to a double ranking for this one, I chose to do Millie and Moxie together just because really it's hard for me to talk about one of them without talking about both of them because really their I guess development and their personalities are kind of so tied together through the show, and kind of so much of how I feel about one is because of how I feel about the other. And there's no real way for me to talk about them individually, so I'm just going to put both talk about both of them at the same time. And by that extension, both of them are also going to be sharing the rank of B. Now, there's not much I can say about either character overall beyond just they're the power couple of the Hasbin Hotel, the Helluva Boss universe. Sorry, the Hasbin Hotel. The I keep saying Hasbin Hotel. They are the power couple of the Helluva Boss universe, and they provide a lot of interesting insight. I mean, especially with Millie being from Wrath and being able to give kind of the perspective of what the I guess how she sees herself, and then how a lot of the perception of Rathians see her. I think it's just very interesting. I do think that Moxie's development of being, from a gang family, and then how that affects some things with the hierarchy of hell is overall very interesting. There's just not much I could say about either character, just that I enjoy when they're on screen a lot more than I do with Blitz. I think just the antics they get up to is very interesting. I think just the kind of bit of wholesomeness that they provide as opposed to the kind of more like I guess horniness of Blitz is the best way I could put it. Is the reason why I kind of rank them a little bit higher. Is just they're moderately more tolerable for me as characters. I do think there is interesting stuff that the show does with them overall. It's not as interesting as Blitz, but I do think that just when they do give them time to shine and give them time to be developed, I typically end up enjoying what they do a lot. So congratulations, Millie and Moxie. You guys get the B tier. And sharing that tier with them, we're going to go into talking about Luna. Now, Luna is a character that's very interesting for me to talk about just because it's weird how much I actually like her. I think that, like, she is a character that when I usually describe her to anyone who hasn't seen Hell of a Boss before, my usual descriptor for her is she's your typical teen girl in an animated show, except she's a werewolf. And that's pretty much all I got to say about her. But there are some things about her that I do think are interesting. I liked her moments in Queen Bee, where we get to kind of see not even I guess where some of her personality comes from, or where her I guess her prickliness is the best word for it, of just like not being so like for like not being so easily able to make friends, or kind of like being hesitant about trusting people like that, and kind of having that trouble with opening up to people in a lot of ways. I think those developments are very interesting for her. I always want to see a little bit more. Her moments, I think, like with Octavia, and again through all of Queen Bee, I think are very, very good for her character and kind of help her to break away from those stereotypes a little bit. most of the time when she's on screen, she is kind of just the stereotypes that I kind of come to expect with the genre. But again, I enjoy when she's on screen. I think that she's fun. I think that there's a lot to enjoy with her character. I kind of just like how she's just like, I can't deal with anything that the main cast is dealing with. I think she's just funny in that way. So, solid character all around. I think Luna is great. So they are going to be going into the B tier. Now, I'm sure to probably no one's surprise from if you guys know me or if you guys follow me or anything like that, for if you've listened to me talk about the show to any degree whatsoever, or if you notice from like the videos that I made about this, my favorite character by far in the show is Stolas. Now, where do I even begin with what it is I love about this character? I think just like the way he kind of represents the whole hierarchy of hell in being a Goetia, I think is very interesting. Just the whole nature of the Goetias are interesting. I think just design wise, he looks really cool. I love the space theme that comes with a lot of the Goetia powers and such, or at least with Stolas specifically. I love the tie-ins with that. I love the design of his like cape. I love how regal. I love how kind of like how like I guess just powerful and rich he kind of shows off to be, and yet also how like theatrical he is about stuff. Like he's not he's a character that I find myself kind of connecting to in a lot of different ways, and just his lack of emotional understanding of, I guess, himself and a lot of other characters makes me very interested in him and kind of interested in his development. He holds, I think, every moment that I've ever cried for things that have happened in this show, and I think just his, with both actors, Bront Baker, kind of the more snooty side of Stolas being kind of the more rich and regal character, while Bryce brings the emotion and kind of the depth that I really, really love about Stolas whenever he is on screen. I just think overall he's a really, really interesting character. Very much deserving of the A rank. He's probably, I'll spoil this now. He probably is going to end up being in my S tier rank for personal stuff, and I'll get to what I'm going to be doing with the S tiers later down the line. For those who don't know, this is actually my first reaction video I've done properly. Last reaction video I did of Yu-Gi-Oh, and because of the fact that my voice was kind of shot and some other things were happening around that day, I couldn't record the video properly, so I ended up using a text to speech to kind of explain my thoughts. And that video didn't end up doing quite as well as I hoped, so I'm kind of hoping to redeem myself with this. But as I hope I explained in that video, I usually save S tier for like my all time favorite. Personally, I think only one thing ever deserves the S tier. A can have like all the favorites that I'm kind of indecisive about deciding on, like who really deserves the top spot. But I try to make sure that S is always the top, and I'll spoil this now. I think for me personally, Stolas deserves that top just because I think he has like the best moments. He's the story that I think I'm the most interested in of all the characters that we get to see. And usually, whenever Stolas is in some way, shape, or form involved in the plot, whether it's he's the one tasking the imps to do stuff, or like something happens with the grimoire, or like something about like I guess the risks that they're running with that was something that I always found so interesting. Kind of the way in which he bridges that gap a little bit between the imps and the higher ranking devils, or the higher ranking demons, I guess. So just there's so much about Stolas I think I really, really enjoy. He's a 10 out of 10 character for me, and well deserving of his A rank spot. I really wish I could say the same about Octavia, because like Octavia, I like her design. Like there's a lot of things about Octavia that I like for the same reasons that I kind of do for Stolas, and that like I think she's interesting in her way of being part of the whole Goetia family and her way of being part of the whole Goetia lore and legacy and that kind of thing. And there's just so much about her that I do think at least could be interesting. But in the words of a fellow Ithaca alum, Mr. Danny Mata, I do think the writers kind of do drive a little bit too hard of a focus on her being like she hates her dad, and that's pretty much all of her character is just her being upset and being frustrated about stuff happening to Stolas. Now, I've talked about Octavia a lot with Alia. We talk about kind of our thoughts on Stolas and Hello Boss quite often, and we have very different opinions when it comes to Stolas. I love Stolas to absolute pieces. She's not a huge, huge fan. And we've said, like, and I will be the first to admit, I don't think Stolas is a perfect character by any means. I love a lot about him, but I also admit that he definitely has his faults and his flaws, and kind of a lot of those are reflected in Octavian, in kind of the way uh, she's written in the show, like the way that all the mistakes Stolas has made kind of are reflected in Octavia and kind of the bitterness that she feels toward him. And like I understand that fully as a perfectly valid thing to feel with a lot of the situation, but I do feel like we've kind of gone through this arc with her many a time over. And not that I'm saying like, oh, one of these times she should just be like, okay, she's over it now. Like she can continue to feel this kind of resentment toward Stolas, and that's completely fine. But really, there's just not enough to her character other than her resentment for Stolas to really feel like she kind of has other things going on. Just like every time it kind of feels like we're back to square one, and we don't really see enough of Stolas, I guess, or we don't see enough of Stolas, or I don't feel that we see enough of Stolas doing things that prompt a regression in that way. Just kind of like stuff happens off screen of that, and then we get one moment, and then it's suddenly we're back to square one again. Or it feels like we're just kind of stuck in this loop with Octavia, which is something that I just never really enjoyed. I do think that she's an interesting character. She's definitely not the worst character out of all the characters that are on this list or that are in my rankings, but I just overall don't think too highly of her. She's getting a C rank. She's up there with Blitz at least. Again, just there's so much. I think like the C should just be like so much untapped potential and so much that could be done with Octavia as a character. We just haven't seen it yet, and I'm confident that we will eventually see it. It's just we haven't yet. Moving on to probably my least favorite part of the Gorisha family, and probably my least favorite part of Helluva Boss, probably in general. What can I say about Stella? I will say this frame one. I didn't like her from probably the very first moment that we got to see her in. I'm trying to remember. It was the second episode of Helluva Boss. It was the Lululand. That's what it was. Lululand. I didn't like her from that very first episode. Just I understand, like, just her first line was like, "Oh, you deal with it." To Stolas when Octavia was crying. Like, I understand when you have a child and you're trying to just sleep that there reaches that annoyance point where no matter how much you might love your kid, eventually it just kind of gets to grind on your nerves. I know this from babysitting before. I know this from a few small experiences. I couldn't tolerate it. I can't imagine a parent who has to live with this every day does it. Like that's got to be so tough on the parents. So I fully understand that kind of frustration, but I guess just a lot of that delivery and then seeing that Octavia is not like that young, her response to that already kind of soured my outlook on her. I wanted to feel sympathy for her when we get the elements of Stolas cheating on her. I really, really dug to find something in my soul to kind of feel sympathy for that because it is an overall shitty situation to be in with it. But then as the show went on and as we got more and more about her, I found less and less reason to. And it's funny how just like at one like, there was a complete paradigm shift of how I felt with Stella of just like, okay, she's bitter and resentful to Stolas for cheating on her. Okay, perfectly valid. She wants to kill Stolas for that. Okay, we're getting like the actual antagonist of the series now. Really interesting. And then instantly, as things went on with the show, she just kind of completely fell off a cliff as a character. Like, just, I don't understand really what her motivations are. I don't really understand what her purpose in the show overall is beyond just making Stolas miserable. And maybe I'm putting her in F rank just because of the fact that she makes my favorite character miserable. But just overall, I just don't understand this character. Anytime that she's on screen, she's just annoying to me. She's annoying to that she doesn't contribute to the plot beyond just to be like the mildest of a nuisance. Like a couple of other characters on this list, just nothing about this character I think is redeemable. I don't think anything about this character is interesting or good. She just kind of exists to further the drama that the show already has going forward in a way that just I don't end up liking. So Stella, F rank for you. So with that being said, let's move on to some characters that I actually really enjoyed. One character that I was very close to actually not including in the list. But then I think I saw some videos of Danny Mata talking about this character, and I saw some things about this character around, and I realized like she just barely, and I mean like barely, cuts the mark of being able to make it onto this list. So congratulations to Sally Mae. You made it onto this list. I think just overall, like I'll keep this kind of short because there's not really a whole lot that I have to say about Sally Mae as a character. I think that her design is really interesting. I think that she is a character that has a much more defined personality compared to the others. The fact that we met her in a short and then kind of didn't see her again until we got to the last episode, Sinsmas, that I still kind of remember her and was kind of like, oh, it's so good to see Sally Mae again and kind of get to see the relationship between her and Millie. I think is really interesting, and again, like it just furthers a lot of Millie's development. Like she is a great addition to the story just for what she does for Millie as a character. And I think that just overall, she herself is just interesting. I kind of would like to see a solo episode of her, maybe going out with the imps on a campaign of sorts or something like that, or I don't know. I think she'd be a great addition to the team. I think she fits really well into it. But I kind of also do like how grounded in her own Rathian roots she is, and how much she kind of misses, how much she clearly loves Millie and kind of wishes for that bond to continue growing strong. How strong their bond absolutely is. Just overall, really great character. Would love to definitely see more of Sally Mae, but from the few moments that we do get to see with her, and for what she does provide for Millie, I'm giving her the B tier. You've earned that, champ. Then we are moving on to another bunch of characters that I absolutely adored seeing on screen, even if I didn't really like them all that much. And we're in for another double. We are now talking about Osmodius, aka Ozzy, and Fizz. The very first time that we get to meet the Sins, and oh my god, does Osmodius and Fizz look absolutely awesome in like every scene they're in. Like Fizz, when we got to meet him in Lululand as like Robo Fizz, already looked kind of cool. He's kind of like I like the clown aspect of him. I don't know. It gives him kind of like this fun, zany energy to him, which I found really interesting. I always liked that there was this kind of chip on his this hatred that he has for Blitz and kind of how that got set up as early as Lululand. That there's some beef going on between the two of them. His design, like I said, is really cool. And then when we finally get to see Fizz in the flesh and we finally get to meet Oz, they absolutely steal the show with their performance. And on top of that, their song House of Osmodes I think is really interesting. I will say that I did think that Oz and Fizz were kind of being assholes in Ozzy's in that episode. Just like I didn't like how they were picking on Blitz. I get it. Like Blitz had messed up on a lot of different stuff, and kind of the points that they were making were fair, but it kind of felt like they were really just being they're being mean about it. They're being mean to Millie and Moxie for just their genuine showings of love. It might not be the way in which they show their love to each other, but I just like as much as I really didn't like them, I didn't like how they were treating a lot of my characters or how they even treated Stolas for that. I still thought they were just such cool characters and kind of I liked the aura and presence that they brought to the show. Like you got the sense they were on a completely different level compared to so many different characters that we got to see in the show up to that point. But and just kind of was really cool to see them. And then as the show went on, we got to see other aspects of their character, and we got to learn a little bit more about Fizz and his relationship with not only with Osmodius but also with Blitz, and that made them really interesting. It made Fizz such a sympathetic character, it made him such a character that I think is an underdog and is so beautifully utilized in the show. And I wish kind of that we get to see a little bit more of that, just because I think he's such a great like development for Blitz of his past, but then also is a great development for I guess just the overall like message of classism that exists within the Helluva Boss show. And on top of that, just again, Oz being kind of this gentle giant in the way that he is, in the way that he clearly loves Fizz, and then also how he shows the possibility of blending between the two lines. I think is really interesting. Like he's a perfect introduction to the Sins, but he also goes to kind of show that the Sins are not like the end all be all of the show, which I kind of like. Like I don't mind if you have like the sense of like gods in the show that are like untouchable and like the most powerful of the creme de la creme of the Helliverse, if you will, like the people who are running everything. And it makes sense that you have like these hierarchy in the Sins running everything. But I kind of did like how they made it through Oz's episode, the later episodes, where it's like he has vulnerabilities just like any other devil or any other creature that exists in the world. He's human in a way, and that makes him a bit more of a character, and I think that makes him overall very interesting. So both of them get the A tier. Next, we are moving on to Queen Bee. And I guess this is going to be a little bit of a rinse and repeat of what I said for Osmodeus. I do think that, again, a nice bit of shading to the Sins. I think that overall, like, she does another great job of kind of fleshing out the nature of the Sins a little bit more. She's the second one that we get to meet. I like, again, the way that she shows this kind of blurring of the line in the classes. I just think that she's overall a very, very fun character. Like, just even if she wasn't a Sin, I just think that her presence in the show is a lot of fun. I think that just she is a great character. On top of that, she doesn't fully give in to her Sin. Like, she's not just like, yes, give in to your desires in any shape or form. Like, she shows that there is restraint, and she shows that there is a lot more to her when she shows concern for Blitz, when she shows that she has these connections to people, that she cares for her people a lot. She's the bright spot of the Sins after kind of the sour taste that Osmodeus kind of left in our mouths, even if he was awesome. Like, even if I like Osmodeus, I didn't like him. Even if I like Osmodeus as a general character, and I like kind of what he represents and that kind of thing, and I liked what he represented in his first episode, he was not a good character for me. I didn't like him like that much in his first episode. B, I loved her from her very first episode, and I think like she's just another like foil to that, which I think works so well. So she, like Osmodeus, deserves the A rank solidly. Way to go, B! You earned it, champ. Now to some characters who don't deserve anywhere close to these ranks. I think these last couple characters, I just was really struggling to think about where I was going to put them, and I just was trying to think of, like, I guess, what positivity do I have to say, or really how could I tear these characters absolute shreds. Oh, Striker. Striker. It really does hurt to put him this low down my rankings, because when he was first introduced to the show, I thought he was a really interesting character. I mean, yeah, he was just really cool because he's the whole like Western vibe. He's the bounty hunter. He's like the what is it they say in his theme song? It's the foulest imp you've ever seen, or that kind of stuff. Like, he definitely earns that title, and he was a character that was menacing, and he was an absolute threat to a lot of what our main cast was after for a while. And on top of that, in a weird way, I saw him as like a mirror to Blitz. Like, both he and Blitz want to trailblaze and kind of rise above their standing, but where Blitz does it in a way where he's kind of trying to show, like, hey, I can be just as good as, well, he's kind of constantly trying to prove himself as being just as good as the Goishas or just as good as all the other people, and trying to rise above his standing by, I guess, a moral high ground. Striker doesn't have that issue whatsoever, and I kind of like the way that he's willing to do whatever it takes and is aiming his sights with such a visceral hatred for the upper class. And kind of like, again, like his perspective as to the whole statement that Hello Boss is trying to make about class was really interesting. But then as the show went on, it just kind of got harder and harder for me to follow along with him, got harder and harder for me to really stay interested in him as an overall character. I think just he became just a lapdog and an annoyance as time went on. I mean, like, it was cool that he was working under Stella to try to kill Stolas. Like, that was an interesting plotline that we got revealed. But then just over time, he just became a hindrance and an annoyance at best, and lost like any bit of menace that he had as like an agent of his own devices and such. So for you, Striker, how far you've fallen, you get a D rank. Now on to Androphis, who, for design alone, I might be willing to rank him a little bit higher. I'd be willing to maybe bump him up to a C on design. But what really drags this character down is he's just like Stella Part 2. I don't know if it's just maybe like the entire bloodline that Stella comes from or that kind of thing, or everyone that's within the ice theming of the Goey show, wherever it is that fits in, or however it is that they explain the connections of Andrelphus. I just don't like him. He's just like everything I hated about Stella on steroids, except he has even less of a character somehow, because I don't really like. I understand he wants to usurp Stolas' power, but I'm not entirely sure necessarily why. Like, if he thinks what he exactly he wants to do that would be better with Stolas' power and his legions, he wants it to. He wants something out of Stella. I don't really understand what. I don't really understand what the relationship between him and Stella is. Like, every scene that they have together, we kind of get the sense that like he doesn't really care about Stella. It's like as long as he's getting the chance to be in power, he doesn't really mind or care whatsoever. But at the same time, I guess he's still close question mark with Stella. I don't really know. It just there's so many things about his character that doesn't make sense, and every part of his character that does just feeds more into what I don't like about Stella. He's just Stella part two is the way that I kind of described him in my own notes. So because of that, when the second verse is the same as the first, we're going down to F. So bye bye, Andrelphus, you get the F. And continuing on with the Fs, we have another character. This one who I have no sympathy putting down here whatsoever. We got Mammon. Do I really need to say more? If you've watched the show, I think you'd fully agree with me in this ranking entirely. He just. Everything that I love about Fizz is why I don't like Mammon. It's just he's like the core things of who he is just he's narcissistic, he's an asshole, he's manipulative, especially the like here's the thing, he could have just been all of that as the symbol of greed, and I probably would have been fine with that. But then it's just the fact that he really knew what it is to say to Blitz, to not Blitz, to Fizz, to make him feel like absolute shit, and knew what to say to be able to get him to do whatever it is he wanted to do, and be able to make everyone else around him feel even more miserable than they already do. Just really, really want to see him get absolutely slapped. I was so happy in Sinsemus when we see Queen Bee kind of like show, I'm so much better than you in so many different ways. Same with Osmodeus, any chance he gets to. I really wish that we got to see a fight between Osmodeus and Mammon and see Osmodeus kind of mouth the floor with Mammon. That would have been great. And that's also one of the other reasons why I kind of threw Mammon a lot lower on the list. Like, Mammon has a cool design, and I think that a fight between the Sins would have been really, really cool and interesting to see. But really, his whole, I guess, rivalry with Osmodeus, or whatever it is you want to call it, just kind of feels like it goes nowhere. Like, we get the really cool scene at the end of the Mammon special episode where he says, "You're going to regret revealing that Oz," and we are led to believe like, oh, this is going to lead to like something where he's going to do, where Mammon's going to do something nefarious, where it's going to come back to bite Osmodeus in some way. And really, since then, we haven't really seen Osmodeus or Mammon kind of take a center role since Mastermind, and that kind of made me feel like he's just kind of all hot air. Maybe that is like the whole thing of Mammon's character. Just he's a lot of hot air. He's a lot of just boasting and bragging for something he doesn't have. That's just what makes greed his sin in general. That's what makes the sin of greed. Is just he's a lot of talk, not a lot of action. But just I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of it. I'd love to have seen a little bit more of the rivalry between him and Osmodeus and kind of how that affects things with Fizz a little bit more. I don't want to see him become another Valentino in the show, but at the same time, I would have loved to have just seen him get his comeuppance in more ways than just what we got from 2 minutes notice. So, Mammon, to no one's surprise whatsoever, you get the F. Bye, buddy. And then for our last character on the list, and who again barely squeaks onto this list, and the only reason he is on here is because he's a sin, we got Satan. And I'm putting him in the D just because really I don't know where else to put him, if I'm being completely honest. Like, there's not a lot to his character that I really got to see. I got that he's mad because he's the sin of wrath. Makes sense. There's a lot of things about his character that I think just he just kind of exists, and I like the little lore drops we've gotten of him throughout Helluva Boss. I like the connection that he has to Hasbin Hotel. That like he and Lucifer are kind of fighting for that, not fighting, but like they kind of argue over who's really in charge there. That the argument exists for who's really in charge between the two of them. There's a lot of things about Satan as a character I think is interesting just for what it does for like the explanations of the hierarchy and the whole thing of hell. I guess spawning from him that all the imps are his creations and such, that he is the big god imp, if you would. I think is very interesting. It's just really, we only got him for one episode, and in that one episode, we got a lot kind of to digest and kind of got a lot to get out of his character, but just not enough that he really like stands well enough alone as a character. So I just put him in D because I had no idea where else to put him. Uh, and really, I'm hoping that we get to see more. And I guess like again, any development we get more of the Sins. Granted that like what is it? That two of the two main Sins that we get to see in the show are both my A rank. Just should say that we need to see a little bit more of them. I'd love to just get any kind of development of the Sins in general. I think that just they are very interesting characters. So any kind of development we can get for them, I am all here for. And with that, that is officially all of the characters in Hello Boss Rank. Now, I'm going to move on to the S tier, but there is one thing I did a little bit different compared to how I did it with the Yu-Gi-Oh series. So for my S rankings, I decided instead of just doing a traditional like, okay, here's the S rank. I think pretty much everyone can guess who the S rank for me is going to be based on what I've talked about in this episode so far. So for this one, what I decided to do is I'm going to split my S ranks. There are multiple in this for one reason. I split it into the series MVP, which is basically who I'm guessing is the S rank for who's objectively the best character. Like, who do I think just from the fan base, from like looking at the show just for what the characters provide and that kind of thing, not looking into my personal feelings, not looking into that. Who do I think the audience would say is like the series MVP? And then I guess loosely, like who do I think like drives it when I'm not like blinded by my love of certain characters? Then I have my objective S tier, which is the just not basing on anything, just looking up online who ranks based on popularity, who ranks based on how many top 10 lists people have done of Helluva Boss, like I'm doing here, and then finally my S rank personally. So we're gonna go through those one by one, starting with series MVP. I said it was Fizz. I think that Fizz is again as the underdog character of the show, as a character who I think, like, despite how little screen time he really gets, every time he's on screen, I think he's an absolute delight. I think that he's a character that a lot of people really like seeing on screen. I mean, Alex Brightman brings such personality to the role, and I think that the Man in Special kind of really humanized Fizz and gave a lot of people a lot to love about it. I think his relationship with Oz is also really, really interesting, and it's just really, really sweet to see. So I think that he is the series MVP. I think that he kind of carries the show on those stretchy arms on the stretchy shoulders, I should say, of his, and does a lot for making the show kind of what it is and kind of is the thing that I think drew me to the show because I watched Hell of a Boss in the probably worst order possible. I started with the Mammon special and then realized, oh, there's a lot of context I'm missing, and then went back, watched the pilot, watched everything up to that, and then went on from there. But yeah, no, like I think that Fizz and his kind of overall story with Blitz is one of the biggest draws of the show, and that if I was trying to recommend the show to anyone, I would talk about Fizz a lot as a way of getting people into the show. So, series MVP is Fizz. And to not really my surprise, because it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, I kind of was surprised at the same time that a lot of people were saying the same thing. I expected like votes in every other direction. I wasn't necessarily expecting a lot of votes in this direction, but also it makes sense to me at the end of the day. The objective S tier goes to Blitz. As I said, according to several polls I took from IMDb, Screen Rant, a couple of sites of sorts, I went on other tier making sites, and everywhere I saw it was Blitz number one, Blitz number one, Blitz number one. So, objectively, I guess Blitz gets the S tier ranking because a lot of people end up really liking him. Again, didn't feel that strongly about him. I do think that his character does narratively drive everything that happens in the show, and kind of the reasoning behind why I care about a lot of these characters can actually come back to how I feel about Blitz in a lot of different ways. But that could be a video all of its own. So, objectively, Blitz gets the S tier. Way to go, buddy! You earned it. But then, to also probably no one's surprise, my S tier rank goes to Stolas. Again, I'm sorry I keep repeating myself on this. I'm sorry that I kind of sound like a broken record with this at this point, but Stolas is my favorite character of all time. I think that just he provides so much that the reasons why I really enjoy the show are because of the moments that I have with Stolas. Just I think that his willingness to be so emotionally vulnerable and kind of the highs and lows that we've gotten experience with Stolas and his perspective and what that provides to how we see classes within Hell is so interesting and overall makes the story so interesting for me to follow. And is the reason though I know that I'm always going to come back to see another episode of Hello Boss because I want to see what they're going to do with Stolas. I'm a sucker for a good love story. I love the relationship between Stolas and Blitz, but really I could care less about anything else as long as we just get a lot more Stolas. I want to see so much more of his character. I want to see what they're going to do with him next, kind of what the next step of his journey is going to look like for the new season. Just there's so much for me to look forward to in this character. There's so much I love about this character pieces. And I think just the Hello Boss as a show wouldn't be such a bright show that I love so much if it wasn't for what Stolas provided to it. So for me, personally, Stolas gets the S tier. And with that, that is my ranking for all the characters I at least cared to mention for the Hello Boss show. If you think there's some characters that deserve more of an in-depth look and more of an analysis from me to decide where it is I want to rank them on this list, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. I definitely know there's a bunch of characters that I didn't consider for probably a lot of other people would have. Probably Barbie, what's her name? Barbie Wire, was that her name? Blitz's sister? I really forgot her name by this point. Barbed Wire, I'm sure a lot of people kind of wished I had talked a bit more about her. Crimson, I'm sure a lot of people wish I talked about them. Just a couple characters I'm sure I probably also missed. Maybe even the Angels, wanting me to talk about them. Again, the Angels, I just found them annoying. That's pretty much the only thing I have to say about them. They don't even like bring any of the good parts about Heaven that I like from Hasman Hotel. Just like they're the worst parts of it, and I kind of am hoping that we don't get any tie-ins to them when Hasman Hotel does eventually come back. Just get them out of my face. Don't want to see them. Just. But if there are any other characters that you guys want me to talk about, I'll consider it at least. I definitely would love to come back and do another one of these videos as we get more characters. And with the new season just around the horizon, just on the horizon, I'd love to be able to get to do analysis. But this is really fun to do. I'm glad I was able to talk about a lot of this stuff with you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully you'll share with me down in the comments down below your thoughts and your feelings on my rankings, if you agree with them, if you disagree with them. Would love to be able to talk about that in the comments down below. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, MTB, signing out. Peace.